Revealed. The amazing hidden purpose of Earth, a transformative documentary that will inspire you. Emma Walker's heart thundered in her chest as the headline blared from her laptop screen. She clicked the video, but her mind was elsewhere, spiraling through the rigors of her life. Just one more shift in the hospital. She could manage that. But who was she kidding? Every time she donned her scrubs, the weight of her world, of her two young children who counted on her, of the meager paycheck that felt like a chokehold, pulled her down. Above all, the burden of being a single parent lived like a ghost in every room of their small house. Her late husband's values of hard work and perseverance echoed in her mind, demanding she keep fighting. Could she truly aspire for more than survival? As the rain drizzled against the window, a familiar unease settled in her stomach, the kind she'd learned to accept, to ignore. Today was supposed to be about letting go of her late mother's belongings. A catharsis turned despair. Emma's fingers trembled as she sorted through faded photographs and forgotten mementos, each item a tether to the past. Then, wedged between two dusty novels, she found it. An old, yellowing journal. Curiosity ignited. As she flipped through the fragile pages, her eyes devoured the accounts of her family, environmental scientists dedicated to ecological preservation, whose dreams intertwined seamlessly with a passion for the earth. They fought not just for survival but for a future, for justice. Emma's breath hitched. The stories illuminated a fire within her that had long smoldered and dimmed since her husband passed. Yet with every page turned, uncertainty gnawed at her. Could she step beyond nursing, toward a world woven with nature's intricacies and challenges that felt tantalizingly out of reach? How could she possibly leave behind the comfort of a stable job to embark on an uncertain path? As the rain continued to patter, she felt the pulse of her heart arguing against her responsibilities. Was it selfish to think of chasing her dreams? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Emma's anxiety twisted into a knot as she spoke to her friends about pursuing studies in environmental science. Like the rain outside, their responses drizzled down around her. Some supportive, others dripping with skepticism. You have to stay practical, Emma, they said, reducing her aspirations to mere fantasies against the backdrop of motherhood. Each dismissive comment burrowed deeper into her mind, choking her determination. The fight for her dream felt monumental, almost ludicrous, and doubt threatened to drown her. It was during this inner turmoil that she met Thomas, the retired professor who saw the flicker of potential she barely saw herself. Their conversations became a sanctuary, a place for her to unravel the chaotic thoughts that twisted her insides into knots. Yet, with each session with him, the knowledge she gained also unearthed uncomfortable truths about her town's environmental policies, issues that made her insides twist anew. As she prepared to confront these ugly realities, another wave of dread washed over her. With her children's future hanging in the balance, she could illuminate their path or doom them with her choices. With uncertainty clouding her vision, the pressure rose. She was about to defy the expectations set upon her, unlocking a fight she never anticipated. Emma held her breath, standing on the brink, her commitment to her family, to her dreams colliding. A decision loomed, one that could rewrite not just her story, but the fabric of her community. What if her voice echoed through this uncertainty? Would it resonate as power? Would she find the courage to persist? Or would fear pull her back into the shadows where she felt increasingly hollow? Emma stood at the precipice of her decisions, her heart racing as if it recognized the weight of the moment. The yellow journal lay open on her desk, its pages a kind of uncharted territory. Each line she had read whispered a call to action, a challenge to step outside the well-trodden path. Yet the voices of her friends echoed in her mind, amalgamating into a chorus that warned her against reckless abandon. Practicality, they insisted, must guide her. Determined to reclaim her agency, Emma took a deep breath and stared at the screen of her laptop, contemplating the documentary she had stumbled upon. What if she could amalgamate her experience as a nurse with a newfound study of environmental science? Rather than viewing the enormity of climate change as an abstract issue dispassionate from her daily life, could she pivot her career towards environmental health? The thought ignited a spark. Doctors and nurses were often at the forefront of understanding how environmental factors influenced health outcomes. That night, once the children were asleep, she cracked open her laptop and started to research. She stumbled upon academic programs focusing on environmental health, each offering pathways that melded healthcare with ecological advocacy. She began to connect with local advocacy groups and online communities that shared her interests. Every click, every shared post, dispelled the shadows lurking in her mind. Possibilities unfolded like petals opening to the sun. The fear of failure lingered, but so did the tantalizing promise of fulfilling her legacy and making a difference. Emma's thoughts turned to her children. With their laughter still echoing in her ears from earlier that day, she pondered the world they would inherit. Would she be content to merely watch it change, or would she take an active role in shaping it? That night, she tucked the journal into the nook of her bedside table. It felt like a talisman of resolve, a promise to herself that she would not let fear dictate her life. The following day was scheduled to be a long one at the hospital, but her mind buzzed with newfound clarity. Even as she navigated the familiar tasks taking vitals, administering medications, her heart pulsed with a rhythm that whispered of potential. Conversations with patients began to take on a new light. Each ailment was tinged with the realities of the environment. In subtle moments, she found herself connecting their health challenges to broader issues, passionate sparks igniting her words as she went from apathy to a voice of reason. She noticed the way her colleagues responded to her newfound fervor. Curiosity bloomed, some even asking her about her ideas. Could she present her thoughts at team meetings? Why not? The idea was daunting but thrilling. Taking the leap would place her in the spotlight, forcing her to stand for something she believed in. Facing the skepticism of her peers could be the test. She needed a way to build a bridge between her current reality and her aspirations. In the weeks that followed, Emma reached out to Thomas, eagerly absorbing his guidance. Each meeting became a clash of ideas, a forge in which her ambitions were tempered and reshaped. His mentorship wasn't just about knowledge. It became a mirror reflecting not only her potential, but also her fears. Each revelation nudged her closer to a choice that felt terrifyingly significant. Yet just as Emma felt momentum surging within, an unexpected email disrupted her thoughts. The town's Environmental Policy Board was set to meet in just a few days to discuss pressing issues. The words community engagement pricked her ears, and suddenly she felt unmoored. This could be her chance to speak her truths, to advocate for both health and environment. She stared at the email, heart racing, caught between the thrill of possibility and the daunting realization of her own vulnerability. Would she seize this moment, using her voice to ignite change, or would she crumble under the weight of doubt? As the email loomed in her inbox, the decision hung like fog over her. The time had come for her to confront herself and the stakes she had begun to comprehend. Emma sat at her cluttered kitchen table, the bright morning sun streaming through the window, casting a golden hue over the pages of her open laptop. The email still sat untouched in her inbox, a tangible symbol of her internal conflict. The countdown to the Environmental Policy Board meeting was tightening around her like a noose, exhilarating yet suffocating. As she stared at the screen, her thoughts raced in tandem with her heart. What did it truly mean to speak her truths? It was one thing to feel the insistent urge for change. It was another to translate that ambition into actionable advocacy. Every moment of hesitation deepened her self-doubt, each tick of the clock mocking her uncertainty. What if they brushed her ideas aside? Or worse, what if they simply didn't care? Determined to transform her anxiety into preparation, Emma dedicated herself to that day's tasks with an unusual fervor, each interaction at the hospital woven with the threads of her aspirations. She approached her colleagues with newfound energy, discussing the impacts of pollution on public health, her own observations morphing into a compelling narrative. What if, she proposed in a casual conversation while charting a patient's medications, we examined how our local air quality correlates to asthma cases here. Raising her voice, she filled the small break room with her convictions. Their initial skepticism ebbed slightly as she offered clear, concise points supported by her research. A nurse named Karen raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious. But what can we really do? It's a systemic issue, she challenged. And it's our responsibility to start somewhere, Emma replied, conviction shaping her tone. Her resolve was unyielding. Karen's hesitant nod was a small victory, but it forced Emma to confront her own insecurities. What was the somewhere she sought? The meeting loomed closer, and every evening became a mixture of dread and determination. Emma felt the weight of her dual-role nurse and advocate growing heavier. She took solace in her journal, rekindling her initial intent to make a difference. But now it felt filled with expectations, hers, the children's, and the very community she wished to engage. One night, while nursing a cup of chamomile in a quiet corner, inspiration struck. If she was to speak at the upcoming meeting, she would need a firm grasp of environmental health principles, more than a mere casual conversation. Determined, she outlined what she wanted to present, her mind racing with the potential impact of merging healthcare with environmental studies. Her hands trembled slightly as she compiled statistics, facts about air quality, and respiratory illnesses, weaving her own experiences into a cohesive argument. The proactive blend of her nursing expertise and environmental awareness crystallized into a vision she could empower her colleagues and community to grasp health as an intersectional issue, not a silo. Days passed, and the sentence she rehearsed echoed in her mind, fluctuating between inspiration and fear. Healthcare and the environment are not separate entities. They are intertwined in the health of our community. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. The sun was peeking through the clouds, a symbolic glimmer of hope and anxiety as she prepared to speak. The bustling voices around her only amplified her tension, the hum of conversation twisting in her stomach as she awaited her turn at the podium. As she stood to face the board, the familiar faces of her colleagues blended with the new ones, uncertainty coiling tightly within her. Each breath felt like a weight, but the possibilities woven through her ambitions surged like a rising tide. Then, just as she opened her mouth to begin, her gaze caught Thomas in the back of the room. His encouraging nod steadied her for a fleeting moment before the reality crashed back. In this was it. The time had come to unveil her vision, her truths, but would those truths be enough to stir awareness, to bridge the ever-growing divide between health and environmental consideration? Emma had stepped up to confront more than an audience. She was facing her own fears and aspirations. With a steadying breath, she opened her mouth. This was the moment that would define her path going forward. The moment hung in the air, suspended between Emma's beating heart and the weight of expectation filling the room. She had rehearsed, researched, and refined her message for this exact moment. But now, as the spotlight seemed to hone in on her, everything felt precarious. Would her voice convey the urgency she felt, or would it falter under the pressure? Healthcare and the environment are not separate entities. They are intertwined in the health of our community, she began, her voice shaking slightly but gaining strength with each word. The eyes of her colleagues bore into her, and for the briefest second, she thought of stepping back, of retreating into the shadows of silence. But the thought of the children she cared for, the families she hoped to inspire, pushed her forward. As a nurse, she continued, every day, I see the direct impact of our environment on our patients' health. Think about it. Asthma rates are climbing, allergies are becoming more severe, and respiratory issues are entangled with the very air we breathe. This isn't just someone else's problem. It's ours. Faces shifted, some nodding in contemplation, while others wore expressions of confusion. Emma steadied herself against the podium, keenly aware of the widening divide between those who understood and those who remained skeptical. Their varied reactions ignited an unexpected fire within her, a mixture of passion and tenacity. Data from our local health department suggests that children living in areas with higher pollution face 30% more respiratory complications. What can we do as healthcare providers to face this reality? How can we start advocating for our patients beyond the hospital walls? She saw several of her colleagues whisper amongst themselves, and an unsettling flutter of doubt crept back in. But she pressed on, drawing from the source of her conviction those children outside the hospital, the ones whose futures were unknowable. Imagine if we could partner with environmental scientists, conduct studies, take what we know from healthcare and apply it to our advocacy efforts for cleaner air. We would not only serve our patients better, but we would also be at the forefront of a transformative shift in healthcare. A wave of energy surged through her, electric and contagious. The initial skepticism around the room began to falter, melting away into expressions of intrigue. Even Karen, who had earlier challenged her, leaned in. Just as she felt a flicker of hope surge in her chest, a voice interrupted. "Emma," the board chair said, raising a hand to stem the rising tide of her enthusiasm. "This is a significant proposition, but you have to consider the practicalities. Our resources are stretched too thin as is." The words hung heavy in the air, a tangible reminder of the systemic barriers she faced. Each challenge to her proposals felt like a test, a measure of her resolve and commitment to usher in change. Her throat tightened, but she refused to back down. "I understand our limitations, but change often starts with bold steps. What good is our practice if we don't address the environment affecting our patients' health? We need to push those boundaries, or we risk losing sight of our role as advocates." Over the course of her presentation, Emma felt the tension shift. Questions arose, discussions flourished, and unexpected allies began to emerge from corners of the room. They actively engaged, brainstorming ways to integrate this new perspective into their routines and ultimately, their policies. But just as momentum started to gather, the meeting abruptly shifted focus. The board chair's hand moved to wrap up the agenda. Emma felt a swell of panic. This was not how it was to end. Mercilessly, time cut her short as they prepared to vote on the proposals from the previous meeting. And suddenly, she realized that although she had taken the first bold step, she hadn't defined where she would stand if they dismissed her ideas entirely. Would she retreat to the sidelines, cocooning herself back into the comfort of her nursing duties, or risk everything to push for a change against reluctant powers? As the board raised hands to vote, each hand felt like a slam against her determination. Would her voice be the catalyst for a profound shift, or would it simply fade into the chorus of silence? Emma inhaled deeply, bracing for the answer that could redefine her future. Just before the vote was announced, a familiar face appeared at the door. Thomas, his expression set with determination. Suddenly, the stakes felt even higher. Not only did she have to face the board, but also confront the truths she had yet to acknowledge within herself. In that moment, Emma knew she was standing at the precipice of not just a professional challenge, but an introspective journey that would carve her path going forward. What truth would she ultimately choose to embrace, and what sacrifices would it demand of her spirit? Emma's heart raced as she locked eyes with Thomas, the medical researcher whose strategic prowess always impressed her. His arrival was fortuitous. Yet, the weight of the decision looming before her dulled the thrill of seeing him. She could feel the board's murmurs around her, anticipation mixed with skepticism hanging thick in the air. "Hey, Emma," he mouthed, a silent encouragement that urged her onward. But the world around her felt cocooned in uncertainty. As she stood at the edge of this pivotal moment, she realized she had to reveal not just her vision for the future, but her deep, personal motivations. With a sudden clarity, she turned her attention back to the board. "This isn't just about policy changes or adjusting the way we think about healthcare," she said, voice cutting through the murmuring air. "It's about our fundamental duties as caretakers of health. It's personal." The shock rippled through the room. She had laid something bare. Going off script, Emma felt liberated yet vulnerable. "Years ago, I cared for a young girl named Sophia. She suffered from severe asthma, and her condition was exacerbated by living in a heavily polluted area. Despite our best efforts in treating her, we couldn't change her environment. She would often come to the clinic struggling to breathe, her small frame trembling with fear. That experience marked me. It was a reminder that our responsibilities extend beyond hospital walls. As she spoke, she poured her heart into every word, drawing in the room. She could see empathy blooming among her colleagues, the shared realization that they were indeed intertwined with the larger issues around them. I want every child to have the same chance to breathe freely as I do, she continued, each syllable deliberately articulated. Our community shouldn't be shackled by environmental neglect while we sit idly by. The cacophony of thoughts inside her mind intensified as she saw the board members leaning forward in their seats, some scribbling notes while others exchanged glances of newfound respect. This was her opportunity to not just share a vision, but to catalyze a collective awakening. Thomas, she called suddenly, her voice steady, could you speak to the potential partnerships we could form with local universities for research? To quantify the impact of our environment on health outcomes? He quickly stepped up, absolutely. There are already studies showing alarming links between pollution and respiratory illnesses. To turn this into actionable insights, we can develop joint research initiatives. The synergy in their thoughts invigorated her, turning the tide of the meeting. Yet as eyes absorbed their words, fear clawed at Emma when she remembered the imminent vote, the judgment soon to be cast on her ideas. What if they dismissed everything, relegating her passionate plea to a mere footnote? What then? Would she feel compelled to retreat, stifling her fiery spirit? Just as her resolve began to waver, she recalled the children she had fought for, the ones like Sophia. This was not just a professional battle, it was a moral imperative. Her future choices would not only shape her career but would echo within her heart forever. Change requires risk, she added urgently. We may not have the resources right now, but we can be at the forefront of something unprecedented. Something that aligns our clinical expertise with environmental action. I don't want to look back years from now and regret the silence when I could have fought. The air shifted. A few board members whispered approval, but a formidable voice interjected, dragging her back to reality. With all due respect, Emma, these notions are ambitious. The practicalities remain a heavy concern. Her pulse quickened. This was at the moment where each word would either ignite a movement within the organization or extinguish her aspirations. Emma felt the crackle of tension, both within herself and in the crowd. She understood their hesitations, yet a flicker of hope surged within, entwined with fear. If she lost today, would she have the fortitude to keep pushing for change in the shadows? Drawing a breath, she locked eyes with Thomas once more, his expression steadfast and encouraging ignited an ember of courage in her core. I refused to falter in the face of doubt. As they prepared to vote, Emma felt anew the significance of her journey. Not just to speak for those who lacked a voice, but for herself. Would she challenge the status quo or fall victim to fear? With resolution spiraling through her veins, she prepared for the outcome, knowing this intersection of personal ambition and professional duty would define the next chapter of her life. But when the board chair raised the paper for the vote, Emma caught the eye of a late-arriving member, someone she hoped had the power to sway the momentum in her favor. Would their presence shift the tides or lead her down a path of further struggle? Emma's breath caught as the board chair initiated the vote. For a split second, time stretched into an unbearable silence, and all Emma could focus on was that weighty piece of paper being raised high in the air. The moment felt monumental, the culmination of her passion, effort, and vulnerability crystallized into this singular decision. Those in favor? The chair's voice boomed, shattering the tension. Emma's heart thundered. She watched as some hands went up hesitantly, while others shot upward boldly. Each signal sent an electrical jolt through her system, intertwining dread with hope. But it was the sight of her colleague Claire, an often cynical member of the board, that captivated her attention. Claire's hand lingered in mid-air, wavering. Emma's mind raced. She knew Claire's past experiences with ambitious proposals, those that had evaporated into dreams unactualized. Could she sway her with the urgency Emma now felt in her bones? Please don't let this moment slip away, she whispered internally, summoning every ounce of confidence she had left. As the vote continued and the hands started to lower, Emma realized she had to reach further, push deeper into her own convictions if there was to be any chance of success. "Claire," she called out suddenly, her voice breaking through the murmurs, "what do you think about redirecting our focus? I remember you saying how directly influenced healthcare is by environmental factors. Would you consider backing this as a long-term investment in health outcomes?" Clara's eyes flickered with surprise, but there was something in Emma's plea that struck a familiar chord. Emma had seen the flicker of recognition before, a bond over shared struggles, aspirations, and the relentless pursuit of better health systems. As she gestured toward the slides behind her, filled with shockingly relatable statistics and the potential partnerships with universities, Emma felt a rush of clarity. It's not just about our facilities or our lab work. This initiative could pave the way for real, lasting impact. Imagine being the organization that took that leap. Think about Sophia, Claire. Wouldn't you want to see children with a future of air they can breathe freely? The room seemed to hold its breath, and for a split moment, it felt as if the world around them faded. Emma could see Claire processing her words, the struggle evident on her face. Then, with deliberation, she raised her hand. Palpable gasps swept through the room. The chair blinked, momentarily taken aback by the unexpected support. "So, we have hold on a moment," he interjected, sensing the fervor in the atmosphere. "Are we certain we are ready to endorse such a significant step without considering empirical backing?" The other board members began to murmur agreement. Emma's heart sank as she felt the ground shift beneath her. This was not her first brush with doubt, but the tension building felt heavier than ever. "Mr. Chair," Emma spoke, emotions bubbling to the surface, "perhaps we should be cautious about the fear that binds us." Her voice resonated with a newfound resolve. "What if our hesitation stems from an unwillingness to evolve? We have forgotten that the greatest advances often come from the risk of uncertainty." The murmurs quieted as her words hung in the air. A challenge, a beckoning. She was standing on the precipice of not only professional aspirations but personal growth too. There was a duality in her fight, one to uplift those who suffered and a deeper journey toward her own courage. The chair looked around the room, weighing her words against the naysayers. "Indeed, we must not overlook the initial asking price of an initiative like this. Can we afford to act now without clear certainty?" The conversation became a dance of opinions, perspectives fracturing like glass, reflecting all sides of the issue. What if this moment defined not just her career but her willingness to stand for something bigger? Desperate for resolution, Emma found her voice rising above the din. She felt the presence of the late board member from earlier bearing down on her thoughts. She knew their experience and influence could tip the scales. Perhaps now is not just an opportunity to vote, but a moment for a promise to believe in what could be. Emma proposed, her heart pounding against her chest. "Will we choose caution or rise as bold innovators in the face of adversity?" With one last look at Thomas, who had become her anchor throughout this whirlwind, she knew she had to brace herself. The moment of truth swelled, ready to unleash whatever outcome lay ahead. And yet, as she awaited the verdict, a question gnawed at her insides. Would this be the breakthrough she craved, or the spark that ignited her struggle? Feeling the weight of that uncertainty, she steeled herself. The tide was about to turn, and whatever came next would require her to confront not just the board, but the limitations she had allowed to define her. What would happen if she didn't just fight for Sophia, but for every child like her, including herself? The room pulsed with a palpable energy, the board members shifting in their seats, the weight of Emma's words pressing heavily upon them. Emma's heart raced, every heartbeat echoing in her ears, as she steeled herself for what came next. The air buzzed with the mingled musk of hesitation and hope. An awkward silence enveloped the board table, and for a fleeting moment, Emma felt exposed, as if they could all see her insecurities laid bare. Would any of these seasoned professionals understand her fervor? Would they recognize the depth of her commitment not just to the project, but to her own personal evolution? The chair's voice, though booming, felt like a distant sound. "Has anyone here done a thorough review of the projected outcomes?" he questioned, eyes scrutinizing each one at the table. It felt as if the challenge was not simply to the proposal but to Emma's very being. Though the chair had instigated a discussion on empirical data, Emma's focus sharpened with every heartbeat. An internal dialogue kicked in. This wasn't merely about facts and figures. This was about a belief that she had honed through years of struggle against doubt. Within herself and the field, she had dedicated her career to what she had come to view as a crusade for a vital cause. Perhaps it's time we redefine what certainty really means, she interjected, the strength behind her words surprising even her. Sure, numbers are important, but they don't capture the real impact we want to have. Empirical data will catch up with our vision if we just take that leap now. With each utterance, Emma felt layers of self-doubt peel away. She sensed direct contact with the aspirations that had fueled late nights and early mornings. Not only was she advocating for Sophia and children like her, but for every opportunity that had passed her by out of fear she was no longer willing to carry. Silence suffocated the boardroom once more. Yet inside Emma, a flutter of hope blossomed. Claire, who had once seemed detached, now leaned forward, a flicker of intrigue dancing in her eyes, as if Emma's words had opened a door in her mind. I can see why you feel so passionately about this, Claire finally admitted, breaking the silence, her voice devoid of its usual cynicism. You're not just pushing for change, you're embodying it. The work we do here has far-reaching consequences. Melting into the moment, Emma embraced the growing tide of optimism. She connected with Claire's revelation, realizing the power of insight could shift perspectives and ignite passion. This wasn't solely about winning votes, but rather cultivating a collective willingness to dream and act against adversity. Each connection born of mutual understanding elevated her mission beyond herself. The chair had to acknowledge the shift. He cleared his throat. Are we ready for this? Are we prepared to invest in hope, aware of potential failure? Failure is merely the first step toward success, Emma replied, a fire igniting behind her eyes. Stepping away from fear is the only way we move forward. We must ask ourselves not just what we can manage but how high we can reach. The board seemed to come alive, murmurs thrumming in sync with Emma's heartbeat. Then, as if pushed by an unseen hand, Claire added, what if we pilot this idea? Start with a smaller community and measure our impact there, experiment with data as we go along while keeping our vision clear. Emma almost laughed, the rush of ideas intoxicating. That's it, Claire. We'd be creating a template for innovation, not just a safe project. We don't abandon our analysis, we enhance it with real-world evidence. Fingers fidgeted and whispers grew louder. The board members now genuinely engaged in Emma's vision. It was a profound moment of connection that she had longed for. With the prospect of a new beginning tinged with excitement and uncertainty, Emma couldn't help but sense the shift within herself. She was not simply a participant in this meeting. She was emerging as a catalyst for change. Let us define a new reality for ourselves, she urged, voice steady and compelling. Yet as a gentle hum of agreement rippled through the room, the chair raised a hand, signaling the end of their discourse, the moment of decision looming large. Everyone here will think about this and we will reconvene next week. I expect to see clearer proposals as well as metrics. Emma nodded, the thrill of faith playfully intertwined with the weight of that expectation. Almost as soon as the meeting adjourned, self-doubt sneaked back into her thoughts. Was she capable of establishing metrics? As she collected her belongings, Emma felt a strange urge to confront this fear head-on. She would not only shape the pathway for Sophia but also navigate her own internal landscape, recognizing that real growth comes from stepping into the unknown. Drawing in a breath, Emma took a step forward. What if the impending challenges she anticipated could, in fact, become the very foundation for her growth? The moment she walked out of the boardroom, one unmistakable realization dawned upon her. The real battle wouldn't just be against the skepticism from others, but against the lingering doubts still woven into her essence. Was she prepared to embrace uncertainty in order to recreate her reality? Emma stepped into the hallway, the weight of the boardroom discussion still pressing against her chest. Each footfall reverberated with uncertainty. She could already sense how the tide of change was turning, yet within her mind raged a storm of self-critique. Could she truly navigate the metrics, let alone the emotional landscape that accompanied them? The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed as she walked, illuminating a path lined with glass-walled offices. Each reflection caught a glimpse of Emma's struggle, a tangible snapshot of the woman grappling with her ambitions and fears. She had emerged as a pioneer today, yet an inner voice kept questioning her qualifications. The bubbling excitement from earlier felt distant, overshadowed now by the looming challenges ahead. As she reached her desk, she sat down heavily, her mind racing. She needed to craft a plan, a solid framework that not only appealed to the board but also resonated deeply with the heart of her mission. This project was about Sophia and the countless others hidden in the shadows of the system. She had to channel her passion into a structured approach that could effectively measure impact. Emma noticed the files strewn on her desk, remnants of a past she was trying to evolve from. They felt suffocating. She combed through them, searching for anything that could reignite that initial spark. Instead, she stumbled upon a note she had written years ago. Always an advocate, never a bystander. The weight of those words hung heavily in the air, pushing her to confront the core of her journey. She took a deep breath. It was evident. Redefining her relationship with doubt would be essential. She couldn't afford to see herself as merely the person seeking approval from a room full of seasoned professionals. She had to occupy a space where she believed she could take ownership of her own expertise. With determination flaring, Emma opened her laptop. She had to outline the key metrics that would demonstrate the project's potential impact. Could she couple qualitative insights with quantitative measurements? Each data point could serve as a reflective mirror of the community's experience, not just cold numbers on a page. She recognized that this was not a mere task, it was the bridge between her vision and actionable outcomes. As she scrambled for her notes, a phone call came through, startling her from her thoughts. It was Claire. "Emma, I've been thinking about our discussion." Claire's voice was effusive. "What if we host a workshop? We could invite community leaders to discuss the metrics and gather their perspectives. Their input could provide valuable context for our proposal." Emma's heart soared. It was a brilliant idea, one that would enhance their understanding of the community's needs while anchoring their work in real-world experiences. "Yes, that's exactly what we need. We can start outlining the questions and topics to address." They bounced ideas back and forth, Emma's hesitation slowly receding as enthusiasm took its place. The potential for collaboration ignited a spark within her, reaffirming that she wasn't navigating these waters alone. Together, they could create a holistic approach that made space for innovation while grounded in actionable insights. After hanging up, a sense of purpose surged through Emma. She began drafting an outline for the workshop, imagining the room filled with engaged faces sharing stories and experiences. The metrics could emerge organically, birthed from the very voices she sought to uplift. Yet, as she immersed herself in planning, a familiar dread coiled within her. What if the feedback revealed more challenging realities? What if their analysis laid bare the limitations of her vision? Emma clutched the edge of her desk as anxiety washed over her. The risk was daunting, but wasn't that the essence of growth? She had to embrace the unpredictability of this endeavor and confront the realities as they came. As she sat back in her chair, a balm washed over her. This wasn't simply about gathering data. It was about forging connections, cultivating understanding, and pushing back against the fears that had once rooted her in place. The hour slipped away, and Emma realized she was no longer merely preparing to face the board. She was building a network of resilience around her mission. But how far could this newfound courage propel her before she had to truly confront her personal limits? Tomorrow's workshop would bring fresh faces, new ideas, and unexpected revelations. Could she transcend her uncertainties amid the unfolding possibilities? Only time would tell, but one certainty stood firm. Emma was ready to meet the emergence of her own potential head-on. As the sun pierced the horizon the next morning, Emma awoke with an electrifying charge coursing through her veins. The lingering trepidation was still there, but now it mingled with excitement and exhilarating sensation that felt both foreign and empowering. Today held the promise of the workshop, a chance to broaden her understanding, deepen her insights, and enact the change she so fervently desired. She moved through her morning routine almost in a daze, the repetition of brushing her teeth and pulling on her favorite blazer taking on a renewed significance. Each action, mundane in isolation, felt like a step towards reclaiming her purpose. Before leaving, she took a long look in the mirror, searching her reflection for signs of the woman she'd evolved into over the past few months. With each participant she envisioned attending, that feeling of anticipation blossomed. Emma's phone chimed with reminders messages from Claire, affirmations of attendance from community leaders, and updates on logistical details. Each notification propelled her upward, yet beneath it all simmered the unease that her preparation might not be enough. Upon arriving at the venue, she made her way through the entrance, greeted by the vibrant chatter of attendees. The energy filled the air, humming with diverse opinions and perspectives, all woven together by the common goal of creating meaningful change. She and Claire had set up a circle of chairs to encourage open dialogue, the arrangement symbolizing their intention to foster connection rather than display authority. As she glanced around the room, she recognized many faces, individuals who had fought tirelessly for community rights, whose experiences echoed the struggles she had only skimmed the surface of. This was her opportunity to dig deeper, to engage with the very narratives that inspired her mission. But could she elicit the raw honesty needed for genuine insight? Her heart raced as the workshop commenced. The voices around her rang out confidently, connecting statistics with emotion, creating a tapestry of lived experiences that had previously only been numbers on a report. Emma listened intently, absorbing every word, even as her internal monologue questioned whether she was adequately equipped to facilitate such raw revelations. A recurring theme began to emerge: the desire for transparency in the system, coupled with the longing for systemic change. Each voice contributing added layers of complexity that filled Emma's grasp of the issue with nuance. As a facilitator, her role shifted from a distant guide to an engaged participant, fostering a safe space for vulnerability. Midway through, one participant, a local advocate named Daniel, challenged the group bluntly. "Numbers mean nothing if we don't understand the human impact behind them. Is your project really serving people, or is it just another box checked?" Emma felt the weight of his question settle on her shoulders. This wasn't a simple critique. It was a call to introspection. What if her metrics became the very barriers she aimed to dismantle? The challenge spiraled into her core, igniting a tempest of self-doubt while challenging her assumptions. Yet, instead of retreating, Emma felt anger bubbling up, not at Daniel but at the notion of her own limitations. It was a clarion call to re-examine her goals. Was she ready to advocate for the transformation of obstructive structures? Could she shift her focus from numbers, often detached from human experience, to the stories that bridged that gap? Reinvigorated, Emma resumed the dialogue with newfound fervor. She gathered insights, acknowledged discomfort, and reframed the conversation towards actionable outcomes. The workshop concluded with an inspiring recognition of their collective potential, yet she was left with an unsettling clarity. She had barely scratched the surface of what she could achieve and learn. As she packed up her materials, Claire approached her, excitement radiating from her. "That was powerful. Did you see the way they responded? We'll have so much data to analyze, but more importantly, we have their voices." Emma nodded, but the question lingered, darker and more urgent. How could she honor the truths shared? The road ahead seemed as daunting as it was exhilarating, a challenge against the very systems they hoped to transform. That night, while sorting through her notes, a text from Daniel arrived. "Let us talk more about this. There's a lot we can explore together. I believe your project can make a difference, but we need to ensure it comes from an authentic place." With the weight of his words resting heavy on her mind, Emma understood that this journey had only just begun. The real challenge loomed ahead. She would need to reconcile personal aspiration with the responsibility that came with leadership. The question loomed larger than ever: was she ready to confront the complexities and discomfort of true advocacy? Emma knew this would be the turning point that could redefine her path. How far would she go to honor the stories that fueled her mission? And with this stirring challenge echoing in her mind, Emma realized she had reached a crossroads. Would she summon the courage to face her deepest fears and assumptions? The next steps she took could determine not just her future, but the very essence of her mission. Emma faced the dawn of a new reality. The workshop had ignited a spark, awakening the determination within her to act not just as a nurse, but as a genuine advocate for environmental health. The cacophony of voices she had once feared now resonated within her, their fears and hopes merging with her own. They were no longer just individuals. They were the lifeblood of the community she longed to serve. In the days following the workshop, Emma dedicated herself to meticulously analyzing the insights gathered. Each story shared by community members transformed into a cherished artifact of lived experiences, none more so than the tale of Sophia, the young girl whose struggles with asthma had ignited Emma's fire. This recollection remained a constant reminder of the impact of environmental factors on health, urging her to push boundaries further. Emma embarked on her next challenge, reconciling the overwhelming data with the human experiences behind them. Armed with insights from the workshop, she mapped out potential partnerships with local environmental groups and health organizations. Gathering evidence became her new mantra, where every statistic she collected was paired with emotional narratives. It promised not only to strengthen her case, but to validate the importance of those she fought for. In a heart-pounding moment, she forwarded her new proposal to the board, with the transformative revisions from voices around the table. One she felt confident would resonate even deeper than before. This time, she had avoided the pitfall of relying solely on abstract metrics. Rather, Emma wove the human stories into her presentation. A dynamic proposal showcasing both qualitative experiences and hard data that entwined the health risks posed by environmental negligence. When the meeting date arrived, anticipation danced in the air. Emma stood before her colleagues with her heart in her throat, a folder thick with papers containing her plans. As she began her presentation, she felt the anxiety that always fluttered at the edges begin to blur away. Instead, she summoned the courage born from countless nights spent looming over her notes and drafting emails, fueled by the intertwining hopes for her children, the community, and the breath of fresh air they all deserved. Today, we have the opportunity to advocate for our patients beyond the clinical environment. Emma spoke passionately, holding the attention of the board. She highlighted the staggering increase in respiratory issues correlated with environmental conditions that emanated from their own community. But beyond the numbers, we have stories of children like Sophia, who deserve to breathe freely and live without fear. As she presented her findings, the board members leaned in, captivated not only by the charts but by the heartfelt passion behind them. Many of her colleagues exchanged glances that glimmered with possibility. Emma could see thoughts churning within them, a handful of barriers slowly beginning to erode. When she concluded, the fervor in the room surged, her colleagues eager to engage in conversation. What started as a hesitant trickle transformed into a vibrant stream of curiosity and collaborative discussions on how they could not just implement her proposal but lead a broader initiative. In that exhilarating moment, Emma felt wholly supported for the first time as their curiosity mingled with validation. The moment in that boardroom transcended mere acceptance. It was a celebration of the very essence of community and healthcare fusing together for something far greater than any one individual. The chair cleared his throat, and Emma braced herself, heart pounding. "I think it's clear we have an important journey ahead of us," he began. "Emma, your dedication to this cause has ignited something we need to explore. We'll endorse this initiative. Let us take the first steps to prioritize health and ecological wellness in tandem." As the wave of excitement swept over her, Emma felt the weight of relief and newfound confidence settle in. She had not only conquered her fears but had established a solid foundation upon which she could build. This was her victory, one she had deemed impossible mere months ago. In the days to come, Emma's commitment blossomed into community engagement campaigns that brought families together for environmental cleanups, partnered local hospitals with education on environmental health impacts, and led discussions on sustainable practices both in healthcare and at home. The transformation within her was palpable. She no longer existed in a perpetual state of survival, but thrived with purpose. Standing amidst a gathering of families and children for the first community day, she watched as they planted trees, an embodiment of growth and the promise of a healthier future. The laughter of children echoed in her ears, a melody that washed away every ounce of doubt she once harbored. Emma had emerged not just as a nurse or an advocate but as a catalyst for change, standing firmly resolved in her purpose. Each heartbeat echoed with a reassurance that she was exactly where she was meant to be, living the legacy she was determined to uphold, carving not just a better future for her children, but for the community as a whole. This was her moment, the apex of her internal transformation, a redemption that fused her late husband's values, her tireless work as a nurse, and her indelible connection to the environment. Emma had truly achieved her goal, conquering her once crippling doubts and embracing the knowledge that she could forge a more meaningful existence. As Emma surveyed the joyful activity, she smiled, breathing in the fragrant, clean air. She had transformed not just her career but her life, swearing to herself in that moment that she would never again allow fear to reclaim her narrative. If you're inspired by Emma's transformation and the pursuit of personal and professional growth, you need to subscribe now to this channel. This is the moment to show your support by leaving a like. Your action will feed the algorithm and help more people discover these emotional stories. Don't wait even one more second. Comment your thoughts and theories about Emma's journey below. And remember to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who could use a dose of inspiration.